stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I absolutely am a stand for Don't Tread on Indiana. I am a retired RN. So 3 years ago, I was working at a local hospital in Indianapolis, and I absolutely had a bullseye on my back because I said no to the jab. I don't have any judgment toward anyone who said yes to it. It is what it is. But I was a stand for sovereignty and was absolutely not going to get the shot. I was a very, very huge minority in the hospital when I said no, and I started to experience some interesting interactions with management because they wanted me to get it. And so I went into work one morning and I was verbally assaulted by my manager, who was never there that early, and I actually took my badge off. I'm a single mom of 3. And I took my badge off and I walked out. So I absolutely am holding the line. Thank you. Like a stand for freedom, because I know there are so many people who are too afraid to say no. There are too many people who are afraid to stand up for our liberties. And I had the strength and the will, thank you God, to walk out. And so now I do everything online, and I am, like, my mission in life is to activate the God spirit within, to help people to stand up for their freedoms, find ways to heal themselves, activate themselves, create an online income outside of mainstream, and to become aware of the corruption within our government, within Hollywood, within all of these pockets that are controlling us. So, Uncle Mike, I lived with Uncle Mike at one point growing up. I'm Monica Painter, and I carry the name Painter with great pride. Super honored to be here. Thank you everyone for coming. And Uncle Mike asked me to sing the national anthem. I have not sang the national anthem for a crowd since high school, but I meant to do this for sure. I'm 42. So you do the math. I haven't sang the national anthem for a live audience in a long time, but I know the words and I'm up for it. So here we go. All right, let me just call in Jesus to just flow through my heart, and requesting that the frequency within this music deliver healing light to every space that craves the light and healing within all of us here close, but then all of those throughout the world, asking that this frequency of love reach out across the entire world and heal all of those places that are experiencing war and brutality, all places that are experiencing oppression and fear, that these words, that the spirit of America and Indiana, that the Spirit of God will flow through us and strengthen us to take our country back from a frequency that is far greater than any human frequency. A God frequency is what we're calling it. Okay. Hope I can sing it loud enough. So move in, everyone, so you can hear me. Okay. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet
I love these types of events where it's just God and country type people getting together to, one, celebrate what we have as Americans and what God has given us, but then also what can we do to steward it and take it into the future. Because that's really what it's about. Our job, every generation in America has had to steward liberty and freedom, and it has had to fight for it. If you go all the way back to the Revolution, you had that generation had to fight for liberty. The next generation had to fight in the War of 1812. The next generation had to fight in the Civil War. The next generation had World War I and then World War II. Then you had Vietnam and Korea and Iraq and Afghanistan. And now here we are in our own war. It's a different type of war. It's an ideological war. And one of the reasons I'm running for lieutenant governor is to stand firmly on the principles of liberty that our founders knew to be true, but it was based out of God's word. And I'm a pastor. That's what I do for a living. And I know what God has said about liberty and truth. And if we don't understand that as a nation, then we won't have America. It'd be like moving a house off of its foundation and then expecting the house to be able to stand after the foundation has been utterly destroyed. You know what that would do if you're a home builder. It would destroy the house. Well, our nation's the same way. We have values and principles of liberty that were built upon the Judeo-Christian ethic, which is liberty. It's liberty for everyone. Everyone is made in the image of God and has a right to certain inalienable rights. This is what our founders said to be true. And so one of the reasons I'm running is to make sure that the next generation knows that. To get into schools all around our nation, all around our state and our nation, to say, hey, listen, this is the principles of constitutionalism. This is the principle of liberty that was birthed in 1776. And I've been working with students up in the Noblesville area for the last 17 years in student ministry, and I've seen the lies that they have been taught through the culture and through our public education system about who America is. Like they've been told America is a racist nation. They've been told America is an evil nation. They've been told things like capitalism doesn't work. I literally had a student come up to me once and say to me, he was in high school, and he said, Micah, I believe that communism is the best form of governance that this world has ever seen. and I said, where did you hear this nonsense? And he said, well, my social studies teacher at school, my public school. I said, okay, well, first of all, that's really dumb what your social studies teacher is teaching you. But I said, give me an example of where communism has actually flourished and it hasn't led to millions of people being murdered. and his response was, he says, well, my teacher said that it just hasn't been done right yet. Okay, so that's, and we laugh about that but it's so sad. But that's the reality. There is an indoctrination happening within our next generation. And Abraham Lincoln said that the philosophy of the classroom in one generation is the philosophy of the government in the next. So if we don't do something now to win this ideological battle, then America will not be America that we know it to be in a few short years. And so that's when I felt the call to get involved in 2016 to really start saying, okay, what can I do to steward this thing called liberty, this republic that we have. And I just started getting involved in the Republican Party. I started running for delegate. I was a delegate in 2016, and it's a really easy way to get involved in the party is to be a delegate. But how many times have you gone to the ballot box in November and have asked yourself this question, why am I voting between the lesser of two evils right now, right? How many times? If you're like me, it happens a lot. And the Lord really just finally convicted me. He said, Micah, it's because you're starting to play the game in the fourth quarter. Go back to the first quarter and get involved. And what he was saying that I'm not taking an active participation role in the grassroots of the system, of this republic. So the system is the Republican Party, the Democrat Party. We have these elections that we have to have a primary. But even go back before that, you have the basic structure of the party system, which is where the delegates come into play, where the precinct committeemen come into play. And a lot of times we as God-fearing Americans, we don't know the system well enough to know what to do about it. So I started getting involved in 2016, and I just started learning the system. One of the things that I learned very quickly is that even within the Republican Party, and I'm a Republican by principle, I'm not a Republican because of the people who run the Republican Party. I'm a Republican because I believe Republican principles that were set up in the mid 1800s in Ripon, Wisconsin, where they elected then Abraham Lincoln to be the nominee for president. I'm a Republican because of those principles, not because of the leaders that we have today in the Republican Party. So I go back to the principles and I say, Republican Party, you have to adhere to the principles of the party. So how does the party stay true to the principles? It happens at the grassroots level. It happens with people like you and me taking active roles and being precinct committeemen, being vice precinct committeemen, being delegates in the Republican Party. And if we start there, we're starting in the first quarter. And then we're building good leadership within the party, because guess what? All the county party chairs, like Mike was telling me earlier, that the county party isn't a huge fan of the liberty movement around here. Oh, that's not surprising. Most county chairs don't like the liberty movement because the liberty movement threatens their power. But how do you change that? You need liberty-minded people to get involved at the grassroots level of the party and begin to change the party leadership. So you have the PCs, the precinct committeemen, they elect the county party chair. So guess what? If the liberty movement grows and you start running for precinct committeeman positions, and then it's a whole room full of liberty-minded PCs, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a great party chairman that gets elected that's going to love the liberty movement, that's going to stand up for people when they are being threatened to lose their jobs, or else get a vaccine or lose your job, right? Like that's to me where we had a breakdown over the 2020. I saw Republican Party leadership not only not defend liberty when people like Monica were refusing to take the jab, but they actually were hurting and going after the Monicas of the world. And I was right there with Monica. I was a pastor. I signed over 4,000 religious exemptions for people in Indiana to fight for their liberty. And so I was appalled at the Republican Party leadership because they didn't stand for liberty when we were saying, please protect our liberties that God has given us. They didn't do it. Well, why didn't they do it? Because the liberty-minded people weren't in positions of power and leadership. So I said, what can we do about that? And probably about 4 months ago, I announced my run for lieutenant governor. And lieutenant governor, you do not run for lieutenant governor in Indiana. Here's why. Because the system always tells the delegates who to vote for. They don't ever get a choice. But I don't like that. The delegates have the authority to elect the lieutenant governor. And I said to myself, why can't we as delegates pick the right lieutenant governor for that constitutionally elected office? And I started asking that question. You know what everyone in leadership would say? They would say, well, that's just not the way we've done it, Micah. That's not the way we've done it. And I said, that's not good enough for me. I want to go back to the way that it was designed. I want to go back to the way that we were founded upon. And that's why I'm running. So I said, I'm going to run for lieutenant governor. And I'm telling you what, it has disrupted the system. It's caused people in power to be afraid. They don't like what I'm doing because now I've just threatened to take away a carrot, an office that's your office and my office. It's not their office, but they use it as a carrot. They give it away to their friends. That's what they do. That's the lieutenant governor position has always been a carrot where they say, hey, if you support me for governor, I'll put you on my short list to be lieutenant governor and I'll give that office to you. Well, last time I checked, that office doesn't belong to a politician. It belongs to the people. And so that's why I said, okay, we've got to change this and give it back to the people. And so that's why I'm running for lieutenant governor. And it's going to take delegates at the June 2024 convention to go down to the convention and vote for me for lieutenant governor and to say we want a liberty-minded lieutenant governor in a place of influence in our state so that, God forbid, we ever go through something like 2020 again. And hear me, it's coming again. This is not, that was T-ball compared to what's coming, all right? Just so you know. We are going to see our liberties clamped down on again in even a bigger fashion in the future. I promise you, Scripture is very clear that that's going to happen. Scripture has already laid out what's going to happen in the end times. It's coming. Our job is going to be to make sure that we stand up boldly for truth and that we elect people in positions of power in the United States that never back down from that truth. And so, again, that's why I'm running for lieutenant governor. As lieutenant governor, a few things that I promise you I will use my influence to do is I will make sure that I will go into I will go into a middle school every single week as long as I'm lieutenant governor. I will get into a middle school and I will teach the students constitutional literacy and American exceptionalism. So that, to me, the battle line is on the middle school front, right? So I will do that every single week. I will find students that I can say, I'm gonna pour into you. I'm gonna teach you truth so that as they grow, they know truth, and then they will know freedom. I also, one of the things I think probably both Republicans and Democrats, leftists and people on the right, everybody kind of agrees on this next topic. I don't know if you've seen your property tax bill in the last few years in Indiana, but if you're like me, property taxes have been going through the roof, and nobody in Indianapolis seems to care. They don't care. And here's, constitutionally speaking, our founding fathers would be rolling in the grave if they knew that we had to pay a tax to the government to stay on our own property. Because is it really your property if you have to pay the government to stay there?
We're renting it.
Yeah, you're renting it. The government has no right, from a constitutional liberty perspective, to force you to pay to stay on the property that you have bought. Now, if you want to argue that there's a sales tax or some aspect of that when you sell your property, okay, we can have that discussion. But in order for you to stay on your property, you have to pay the government every year to stay there. That is egregious, and that needs to stop. And as lieutenant governor, I will fight to make that change in Indianapolis. So I'm also somebody that is an ardent defender of the Second Amendment. My heart breaks for what I see happening in Israel right now. I am absolutely broken. I was just in Israel back in December, the same kibbutz where those children had their heads cut off. I was there. I was walking. I was playing soccer and basketball with some of those kids in December. And I asked the question, because we were right on the Gaza fence. I asked the question to the people giving us the tour. I said, what is your right to bear arms over here? Do you have guns in your house? Do you have personal protection? Their response was, no, we do not have a right to bear arms in Israel. If you want to bear arms in Israel, you have to go through a tedious process just to get a pistol with a very limited amount of rounds that you can have in your possession at one time. So when Hamas came storming in to this kibbutz and to other kibbutzes around the Gaza Strip, they had AK-47s. People didn't have a chance. And here's the beauty about the United States, is there is a gun behind every blade of grass in this great country. And that is the beauty of how we've been able to protect our freedom. If you don't know the history of that statement, there's a gun behind every blade of grass. It was the admiral in the Japanese Navy, when asked why they didn't go from Pearl Harbor up to the mainland in California and invade America, that our Pacific Fleet was destroyed. I love studying history, and if you would have known what had happened at Pearl Harbor, our whole entire Pacific Fleet was destroyed at Pearl Harbor, and we would not have been able to stop the Japanese from a military perspective until they marched all the way to the Mississippi, is what military historians have said. But the reason the Japanese did not go into the mainland is because Admiral Yamamoto, he said, we knew that there was a gun behind every blade of grass in America. And we knew that civilians and citizens would rally a defense, and we would take on mass casualties as the Japanese military if we were to try to do something like that. And it was only because of our right to bear arms that they didn't do that. And so, as I'm heartbroken for Israel, I also look at Israel and say, Israel, learn something about what America has done. Look at the constitutionally inalienable rights protected within our Constitution that we have, and one of those is the right to defend yourself. And so here in Indiana, and I love the "Don't Tread on Indiana" logo with the eagle carrying a rifle. It's because we have seen what happens when people don't have a right to bear arms. Literally a week ago today, people who were unarmed, sitting ducks, were absolutely brutally destroyed and massacred in some of the most egregious ways. Little children burned to death, lit on fire. If that were to happen in the United States right now, and specifically Indiana, Lord have mercy on Hamas, right? Like, because we would absolutely light them up in the most amazing, God-fearing way that we could do that. And that's because we have the right to bear arms. We should never, ever, ever let someone tell us that you don't need a weapon because you have the police or you have the military. No, they had police and they had military. They actually have a very good military in Israel. And guess what? It didn't do the people who were on the border with Gaza any good. And so I will be just the most adamant defender of the Second Amendment. I will also make sure that as your lieutenant governor, I will hold the Republicans' feet to the fire. If there is a governor, and this is the beauty of influence, if there's a governor who ever wants to lock down the state again, whoever wants to try to force people to wear masks or else throw them in jail, because that's what Governor Holcomb tried to do, if there's ever any governor that's going to do something that stupid and that wrong when it comes to their power, then you will have a lieutenant governor in that second office that will say, Governor, I'm not going to let you get away with this. I will be a thorn in your flesh if I have to.
All right. Okay. Thank you for having me here today. Again, my name is John Jacob. I am the former state representative for House District 93. For those of you that don't know House districts, there's 100 state representatives in the state of Indiana in our legislature. The district that I represented was on the south side of Indy and the north side of Johnson County, which is the county just south of Indianapolis. I was elected in 2020. I had worked almost 30 years I just want to make sure I keep track of time here. I'd worked almost 30 years for a government watchdog agency called the State Board of Accounts. So over my career with the State Board of Accounts, I audited cumulatively in the hundreds of billions of dollars. So I had a great view to government. As a Christian, I was animately against abortion. And one thing I learned as a state representative, working for the government as an auditor, is dealing with political officials. I said I never wanted to run for political office. And I said I never wanted to run for political office. And a friend of mine, we still do, we minister out at the abortion clinics to try to save babies. In Indiana, we had a bill to abolish abortion for 7 years in a row, starting, I believe, in 2016. And in 2019, my state rep actually resigned. They caucused in another individual. My buddy said, hey, his name is Brian. Brian said, hey, John, did you know that your rep resigned back in June? I said, no. I said, I didn't know that. They said, yeah, they caucused in this individual into that spot. I said, okay. And he said, would you consider running for the spot in the upcoming primary? I'm thinking in my mind, no way. There's no way. I do not want to run for office. I detested political officials because most of the time when I worked, the watchdog agency that I worked for, dealing with political officials, they feel like they own their own little kingdom, like they're kings. And I thought, no, I don't want to go into that realm. I don't want to be that. So anyway, he said, well, will you pray about it? Oh boy. Yeah, I said, okay, I will pray about it. And I thought, there is no way in the back of my mind, which I didn't communicate this to him, but I thought there's no way that God is going to call me to run for office. So as I continued to pray, and I continued to pray, I felt like God was saying that I needed to run. And my detesting running for office actually became a desire for running for office. So not only did I feel like God was calling me to run for office, but God also changed my heart to line up with what his will was. And a lot of times God will do that, So we ran our campaign on a shoestring budget, and the establishment Republicans, I think they were blindsided because they thought there was no way that I was going to win. And in the primary, I ended up winning by 71 votes, and I beat the incumbent. And so fast forward to November of 20, I won the general election, got into office, and I put through a lot of good legislation to abolish abortion that I co-authored. That bill that I talked about to abolish abortion, well, that bill kept on dying in committee every single year. So backtrack on that. That was one of my biggest motivators for getting into office, is because I was sick and tired of watching women and men coming in to murder their baby. And we had a bill to abolish abortion. We could have done that, but we didn't. Well, we have a Republican supermajority in Indiana. The Republican platform says, oh, we're pro-life. You ask every Republican politician, are you pro-life? Oh, yeah, sure, I'm pro-life. But what do? We regulate abortion. You should no more regulate abortion than you regulate murder. The only thing that Republicans, for the vast majority of Republicans across the country, they do nothing to abolish abortion. All they do is regulate the when, where, and how you perform abortion. That's wrong. That's like saying, hey, you know what? You have to wait 72 hours before you can murder somebody. It's okay to murder somebody, but you have to wait 72 hours. You said, that's stupid. You wouldn't have a law in the books like that. Well, that's exactly the kind of laws that we have on the books. In Indiana and other places, you have to wait 72 hours or 24 hours or 48 hours, whatever it is. Each state is different. Or you have to see an ultrasound. You have to see an ultrasound of your baby before you have an abortion. But yet, if you had a law on the books that said, hey, you know what? You have to look at the individual that you're going to murder. If the laws in the books were, I'm not talking about babies, I'm talking about murder. If you had a law in the books that says, you have to look at the individual before you murder them, and then if you still want to murder them, then you can murder them. I know, that's the kind of look that I would give. And if you say that to other Republicans, they'd say, oh, well, that's stupid, John. Of course, you never have a law in the books like that. It's like, then why do you sit there and vote for laws? Why do you vote for laws that do the exact same thing for the preborn? We talk about the preborn being living human beings. Science doesn't even dispute this issue anymore. Human life begins at conception. So the preborn should be able to enjoy the same constitutional rights that you and I enjoy. So I promise I'm not going to sit here and harp on abortion, because it is a big platform that I really, really hit. And the reason is because I love our country. I love our country. I love the freedoms that we have. But I try to stress this point over and over wherever I go. God will destroy the United States of America if we do not repent of the bloodshed of the preborn. It's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And this has been going on for 50 years. We murdered over 3,000 children a day in the United States of America. Over 3,000. We had the ability to be able to abolish abortion 7 years ago. We had the ability a long time ago. We have a Republican supermajority in Indiana. Do you know what a supermajority? If you know what a supermajority is raise your hand. Okay, so in Indiana, we have the House of Representatives, we have the Senate, and we have the governorship. Well, the 100 representatives that I talked about in the House of Representatives, we have 71 Republicans in the House. We have 38 out of 50 senators that are Republicans. And when I say Republicans, you know what I'm saying. They say that they're Republicans, which the vast majority of them are rhinos. And then we have a supposed Republican governor. I've heard that somewhere, but I don't know where he is or who. Yeah, anyway, I won't go there. So anyway, you get my drift. So there's no reason why we should not be able to get good and true and just and constitutional legislation that defends our liberties and our freedoms. I was just talking with Micah about this. Micah Beckwith. Look at the political lay of the land. Whether you're left, or and obviously everybody here is on the right, but in a mixed crowd of left and right, whether you're left or whether you're right, you can't disagree that the country is just being dragged to the left. The left is getting what they want. They're dragging us into an abyss. They're dragging us into, a hellhole. And in so many states where the Republicans are even in control. You have to ask the question, how is that? How does that happen? Look, if you've ever played tug of war, who wins? The one that's stronger and being able to pull essentially to the other side. Well, what's happening? We're being pulled to the left. Further and further, faster and faster. And it's not just going at a downward, like this slow downward slope. Now it's just like this plummet into the hole. I was just talking before I came up here. So I'm former state rep. So now I want to talk about now. My senator for my area passed away suddenly 3 weeks ago. And they have to fill that spot. Now, I don't know if many of you are familiar with how they fill those positions when the legislator's spot goes vacant, whether it's by a death or whether it's by a resignation or retirement. I think I heard Micah when I came up what he was talking about. He was talking about the PC project, which I'm going to get to that, the precinct committee project that we've got going on here in Indiana. So I'm going to let you know what you can do to fight for liberty. So each of you can actually take an active role in this. So since my senator died, they have to fill the spot within 30 days. And so they're going to have a caucus. And that is where the precinct committee chairman, they come together and they're going to vote for the new senator for my district, Senate District 36. There are two people running. There's myself, and there's another person. I'll just say it that way. One of those people is an establishment person. I'll give you a guess as to who that person that I'm not that person. So I'll just say that I'm not that person, obviously. As I was talking with one of the precinct committee chairmen on the way up here, she had given me a call back. She's actually a county chair. And her and I kind of have a rocky history because of my strong right-wing stance. And she felt like we had a very open conversation. And I said, I'll just call her Jill. So Jill, I know you don't necessarily like everything where I stand, but I brought up the issue about where our country is going. I said, do you like really what's happening? Do you like what the Republicans overall are doing? I said this, and she brought it up. I didn't. She brought up the patent phrase, go along to get along. That was part of my speech, was going to be part of my speech to the caucus, to the precinct committee chairman. Well, I'll tell you what, go along to get along does not work. If all you're going to do is go along to get along, you're going to compromise. You're going to compromise. So what do you compromise? You compromise something very critical. You compromise our freedoms, our liberties, our constitutional freedoms that people bled and died for, and we're just squandering them away, just giving them away. This isn't working the way it is. And so you have to say, okay, well, what then do we do? And I explained to Jill, I said, you've got to have an opposing force to the left that's stronger than the left. One that drags to the right stronger than what the left drags to the left. And I said, until you do that, nothing's going to change. The only thing that's going to change is things are going to continue to get worse. But the problem is that if you don't put people in office that are willing to stand up to the establishment and leadership, it'll never happen. Because I can tell you that the pressure is immense when you get into office. It is immense. I've known other legislators who were liberty-minded candidates. They started out good. And then when they got into office, you know what they did? They caved into leadership. And bottom line is I'll tell you, I told this precinct committee chairwoman, I said, look, I'm not trying to be abrasive. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be a jerk. But the bottom line is, is that I love God. I love my family. I love Jesus, and I love my grandchildren. I love our country. And I want to fight for what we have. I want to be able to preserve what we have. So if my crime essentially is that I want to fight for the freedoms and liberties that we have to continue to keep them, then I'm guilty as charged. But if you're thinking that somehow or another that the spin is that I want to be able to cause trouble or cause dissension, because that's what they'll do. They'll gaslight. You know what happens? People just gaslight you. You're trying to do the right thing, but people will gaslight you for doing the right thing, and from your own party. That's the sickening part. I really want to believe better for people, and there are people even within the House of Representatives that I talked to. There were some that wanted to do the right thing. They said, John, I love where you stand. I agree with what you're saying, but I just don't have the backbone that you do. And I'm not trying to pat myself all in the back. All I'm trying to say is that we need more people in office who are willing to stand up to the status quo. And as long as we continue to go along, to get along, and to just not stand up against the status quo, then you know what? We're just going to continue to get what we're getting, which is a bunch of garbage. By the way, I'm a street preacher and I'm an evangelist. I'm trying to keep from not preaching. So please forgive me if I'm sounding too preachy in between here. But there are some verses of the scripture that I want to bring into the issue of abortion. God says to deliver those who are being taken away to death. Okay, that comes in a lot of forms. It can go with child sex trafficking. It can go with people who are just being killed for whatever reason. But that does apply to the preborn. God says to open your mouth for the sons of death. That does apply to the preborn. God did not give that as an option. He didn't say that was optional. That was a command. The previous law in Indiana was that you could abort your baby up until about 16 weeks without going into the details and the exceptions. The present bill, Senate Bill 1, which is we had a special legislative session last fall because of the overturning of Roe versus Wade from June. Senate Bill 1 was another compromising bill. It was a bill that was, again, going to regulate abortion. This whole thing that was touted in the news that this bill would abolish abortion is a bunch of garbage. It still allows abortions up to, I believe it was 12 weeks. 12 weeks. I'll go through the other pieces. There's 7 abortion clinics in Indiana. All it does is it moves abortion from the abortion clinics now to ambulatory surgical centers, to the hospitals, which means it's moved to hundreds of places. Well, I'll tell you what, I've ministered at abortion clinics for years. I've literally ministered to thousands of people over the years, literally thousands of women coming into abortion clinics. At least with abortion clinics, we had 7 of them. We knew the when, we knew the schedule, we could be out there to plead. With them being at the hospitals now, there's no way to plead. And plus, this new abortion law actually allows abortion up to birth. Did you know that? Yeah, people get really wide-eyed on that one. It does it, what's that? Up to birth. Up to birth. You can look at the law. I'm trying to scale my anger towards the legislature over this issue is the whole other thing, but up to birth. They can do it for what they'll say is the life of the mother. But the problem is that it leaves it in the hands of the doctor. The doctor can just say it's life of the mother and still kill a baby. Or what they call fetal anomaly, without really defining what fetal anomaly is. So it gives a whole host. Oh, by the way, this one's a classic. This is the last piece of that legislation. If a woman says she's raped, she can have an abortion. She doesn't have to have a police report. There needs to be no charges filed, no affidavit, no notary. All she needs to do is just come in and say, I was raped. Doctor then has to give her an abortion. That's not the left that gave you that bill. That is your Republican supermajority operating in Indiana. Now, Jill, the PC that I talked to, if this is the type of stuff that I'm accused of being because I'm gaslighting my own party, well, I'm sorry. This is where our party needs to be rebuked and exhorted and challenged, because this is not something that's like an oops. They're going into this fully knowing that they're campaigning on the backs of babies, but yet they still choose to regulate abortion. And by the way, that abolition bill, I said I was going to wrap. I think I'm lying here because I keep on saying I'm going to wrap up. So, Senate Bill 1, the abolition bill that I talked about that was going to abolish abortion, that Representative Curtin Isley authored and I co-authored on, that bill to abolish abortion, because it was killed in committee every year by the Republican supermajority, they never gave it the light of day. We never have the opportunity to be able to bring it out of committee. But because they actually had an abortion bill on the floor, we were able to finally take our bill and actually amend the bill to abolish abortion. And we did that in the fall. Out of 71 House Republicans, six of the Republicans voted for the bill to abolish abortion. Representative Curtin Isley, myself, and 4 other Republicans. All the other Republicans present that day, I think there was maybe a couple of them maybe that were not present, all of them voted against the bill to abolish abortion. That whole thing that the news is talking about, that Senate Bill 1 was an abortion ban, is just utterly ridiculous. Because I just had recent back surgery and a lot of other things right now, as I'm campaigning, I've not been able to be out at the abortion clinics as often recently. But one of my friends is actually out at the abortion clinic that we actually minister at. Abortions have not basically changed in the last year since that bill was changed. We still have about 2,000 abortions every quarter in Indiana. And that right now is only because that bill has been hung up in court. What will actually transpire, the first quarter data for abortions will not be known until this December, which I'll be waiting to see what that is. But right now, I know this, that the abortion clinic that we do minister at is literally 2 to 3 days a week is referring 30 to 40 women over to Ohio to get their abortions. Same corporation that's running the abortion clinic in Indiana and Ohio. When you do not treat a crime for what it is, this is what you get. It's murder. And even if let's just say best case scenario, let's just say Senate Bill 1 goes into place and all abortion is gone in Indiana. What you will get is exactly what's going on at Arlington Clinic that I'm going is they'll refer women over to the abortion clinics in Ohio. So, in other words, babies will still die, and the vast majority of them will still die. It's just that now they'll die in another state. So until we do what we should do, and I know this sounds harsh to people, but until you treat murder for what it is, until you treat abortion for what it is, it's murder, and that is that you criminalize it. At the abortion clinics, they change it to consultations, but abortions are still happening in Indiana. I cannot answer that. I can't answer that question. But all I know is this. I just literally pulled the quarterly reports for State Department of Health like about 2 days ago. And for the quarter ending, let's see, this is October. So September wasn't in. So the quarter ending June and the quarter ending March of this year, there was about 2,000 abortions for each of those quarters, which works out, about to 8,000 abortions in a year. And that's about what Indiana's rate has been. It's been 8,000. So all I'm trying to say is abortions are still happening in Indiana. Right, with the court injunction against SB 1 that was immediately filed once SB 1 passed, which is that abortion, the quote abortion ban, which is not a ban, that was passed last fall. The court injunction went into place. They reviewed the case. Well, they finally got the determination on it, so they're upholding SB1. So I'm like, okay, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But the bottom line I'm trying to say to people is it shuts down the abortion clinics, but it just under the law, it just transfers abortion from the abortion clinics to ambulatory surgical centers. And my understanding is about 150-ish ambulatory surgical centers. And I can tell you, ministering at abortion clinics, again, you know when they're killing babies, you know where they're killing babies. We knew their schedule, so we were able to schedule people to be able to be there to plead. With an ambulatory surgical center, there's just no way. I mean, you've got multiple points of entry into a hospital campus. You've got people that are coming to an ambulatory surgical center that are coming there for all sorts of reasons. And that's now what, 5 or 6 days a week? It's impossible. It will be done. Abortion ministry in relationship, what was in the past, being able to be at a clinic, to be able to minister there, it will be gone. It will be impossible. Yes. So far, we've had 31, I think the last count was 31 babies saved this year at Arlington. So, and go ahead. Oh, yeah. Right. My wife was talking about, so preceding my time in office, I spent time preaching in the State House. As I said, I'm a street preacher, I'm an evangelist, so I spent time in the State House calling legislators to repent. I was calling them to repent of their apathy over the preborn and to pass the bill. The legislators' arguments were that we have to wait, John, we have to wait till Roe versus Wade is overturned. If Roe versus Wade is overturned, you know what? Or if you get that bill out on the floor, we'll vote for it. Well, guess what? The unthinkable happened, and Roe versus Wade was overturned. And guess what? We got the bill out on the floor. And guess what? Only 6 out of 71 House Republicans voted for it. Any other questions? I'll be hanging around for a little bit. I can't stay around too long. I'm still campaigning, and I've got a lot of work to do. So, yeah, thank you all.
Hey, folks, welcome. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your attention and interest in this important area on the liberty thing, and want to thank the sponsors, Mike and Jeff, for making this happen. Going up a little higher. Okay. My focus on my talk is just, I think I'm scheduled for about 15 minutes. So I'm just going to focus, my interest is at the local level, Brown County. That's kind of where I work. And so when you look at what Mike had said and you know, our last speaker, Jacobs, they focus on maybe state level. I'm focusing on the county level. What do we do here? And if you're familiar, I'm an administrator for the Facebook post Brown County Matters. I'm in the grassroots, I think, as they said. I go to the meetings, commissioner council meetings, other government meetings. I write up my notes and share that, you know, in Facebook. I also run a blog I call Independent Voters of Brown County, Indiana. So if there's any more detail associated with an issue, I also make that available on that site as well. And I've got a couple other sites on a couple other issues. So when you look at and I'm going to shift based on what they said. I'm going to kind of jump around on what I was planning on talking about. But what we're experiencing at the bigger picture and for the country, what we're experiencing is revolutionary level changes across a lot of different areas. And I would include those areas on the political, the diplomatic, cultural, social, military, and even spiritual. And if you watched what's going on or paid attention what's going on the last 3.5 years, you can see, you know, it's pretty extensive level of changes. And so from a military standpoint, wow. You've got your rumors of war and actually wars, and we're talking about not only Ukraine, but you talk about Israel. I mean, wow, can't imagine. But yet it raises awareness of how a fine line there is between brutality and civilization, and you're seeing that on and videos and of war efforts going on now in Israel. And then also they talk about World War III, that different events can escalate us again to World War III, and they throw out the use of nuclear weapons, and it just stuns me that they're so nonchalant about, oh, well, we might have a nuclear there. Well, hate to tell you, if you go back to the Cold War, that escalates pretty quick. And so, and I don't think we're going to be immune from these events. We're going to see it here. And so what I'm going to talk about today is really my focus is on county level. What can we do to make, given all these things that are going on, the potential, what can we do at the local level to have a stronger community and a stronger county to help us be more resilient regardless of what goes on? I think on a local level and local politics, and I think one of the speakers mentioned it, we're a microcosm of what goes on at the national level. We have your left, we have your right, we have your special interests, we have your rhinos, you have a little bit of everything. And I tell you, I think our greatest weakness as a county is we have a one-party monopoly on political power. And centralization of power is never a good thing. And that's called a kind of a closed political system, that if you're not within it, you have no impact on that system. You got to be an insider to have any kind of influence. So a few people can make the changes that affect us all. So they make the decisions for the many of us. And so when you look at that capability, if I was going to assess the capability of that particular system on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, we're maybe about a 2. And at the national level, I put us at a -10. Just not real capable of producing the kind of results that we need as citizens and as a country. And so the other thing that this closed system kind of does is it morally corrupts the people that work within it. And it's that saying that, if you put a good person in a bad system, the system will win every time. And that's true in our area. And let me show you some of the examples of what that closed system produces in Brown County. When I ask for a public document, sometimes it takes me 2 months to get it, and it may take them 5 minutes to attach a document to an email and send it to me, but I've got to go through 2 months to get it. If I ask for information, they've got 30 days to respond, and if they don't respond in 30 days, I go to the state, and the state gives them 30 days. So maybe I get it after 2 months, and if they want to play around, it takes a little more time, and there's been times there's been, I don't know, 4 months, I think, is a record for me getting the information I wanted just a public record. So that shows you just the lack of transparency that we have within the government. And transparency helps leads to accountability. And so when you look at some of the major decisions, you even look at our meetings on the agendas for the council and the commissioners. We've made a 6-figure investment in a website, but yet we don't post the minutes, the agendas, and the audio for commissioner and council meetings when the decisions are being made. And and it's like that's a great way of explaining to people what's going on instead of keeping everybody in the dark. And in some of these meetings, I can hold my nose on some things, but other things, we've got people working hard to do good things, but you never hear about those because we choose to keep that information, keep everybody in the dark. And again, that's just more of an abuse of power. Some of the decisions, I've experienced, and I could write books and show you about a dozen of them, but let me just hit the highlights on what a closed system does. They closed the railroad crossing on Indian Hill Road, brought it up at one meeting back in 2020, brought up the idea at one meeting, and then the next meeting they went ahead and closed it. There was no public hearing. They didn't identify all the stakeholders that were affected along the road. And then the county attorneys didn't identify what the risk and consequences of closing that road and that railroad crossing would be on the county. Well, it's taken us 3 years of pushback from all the stakeholders to lobby NDOT, file a petition with NDOT to reopen that crossing, and NDOT agreed, put different conditions on it, and it may take, I don't know how much money is going to be involved or how long it's going to take, but stay tuned. It may be another year or so on that one. Another issue was the music center. When they were talking about pushing, developing a music center here in the county, there was only 2 public meetings to get citizen input on that decision. And those were at the meetings where they voted to approve the project. And when I went to the council meeting, they couldn't wait to vote fast enough. They were pretty excited about it. And so, the president of the council said, well, you got 30 seconds to comment one way or the other whether or not you like this venue. That's a closed system. No public meetings at all. And that was like $12.5 million. No public meetings, no citizen involvement, no input. The other one, the more recent one, is this Brown County Regional Sewer District Board. Wow, they're the appointees, 5 appointees from the commissioners and the council. They spent $100,000 to develop, get this, a countywide strategic wastewater plan with the idea of expanding sewers to replace septic systems in as many areas as you can. Well, that's a pretty extensive change that affects a lot of people. So that $100,000, the majority of that was funded by the state, and then the taxpayers in the county had an input into that as well. And so during that development of that countywide plan, no public meetings, absolutely refused to have any public meetings to get input from citizens. And then when it was finalized, they refused to present that at any kind of public meeting so we could ask questions about the plan and the water quality study that went along with it. And so what's even more insidious, so now we've got a $100,000 investment in this plan developed by individuals that were appointed, not elected. And so they use that as an application to request funding from the state to expand sewers and build a new plan. And part of the project, I support the Helensburgh area out to Lake Lemon. I support that. The Bean Blossom expansion out to Woodland Lake, I do not. I don't think they justified the need. So anyway, they applied for the funding, and I think the initial estimates on the whole thing was around $50 million. And so, and that was an application for funding. At that point, they did have to have a public hearing, which they had July 8th. You had till July 14th to give you comments, which I gave them 13 pages of, and along with questions. And then you had a cutoff of July 14th. And then we're supposed to get responses to those questions. Well, we didn't get responses until October 5th, 3 months later after the public hearing for this application for funding. And so then you find out that at the state and federal level, they gave tentative approval to make partial funding for these projects. So now that begs the question, did anybody read the information that we provided, that challenged the argument for that project? And so I'm in contact now, this may take me the next few months, with state officials and federal officials challenging their process for granting any kind of money for this project without doing their due process. And again, if you understand laws, there are statutes at the state and federal level that they have to do due diligence before they spend money on projects. So I'm pushing that angle, so stay tuned. How to make better decisions. When you identify a problem, it's always nice to have a solution. A few years ago, we got a grant from the state to, for an improvement projects, and we had a choice of 3 things. You had, economics, placemaking, and leadership. And so we chose leadership. So in a couple of years, we had a group of volunteers, had a lot of training provided by the state, and we developed a kind of a methods and tools for improving decision-making within the county. And so we developed a website and put those self-help guide out there and different guidance as to how we can improve decision-making within the county. So if you get a chance, Brown County Leader Network, you can kind of Google that. It's funny. Talk about new and that, continuous improvement would be new. Hank Swain, I'm familiar with his work, kind of an old-time Brown County historian, comedian, author. And I remember reading in the Democrat about 30 years ago that he said, well, any new idea in Brown County would take about 8 years. And so I think he's been pretty accurate, and that's kind of where we're at on trying to introduce continuous improvement here in the county. What can we do next? I think the guys mentioned it, and they're exactly right. The primaries. We've got primaries coming up in 2024. So if we want to make a change within our county and the precinct project, I'm familiar with that as well. But we've got 2 commissioners up for reelection, or up for 2 slots for commissioners, and we got 3 for council. And so that's the chance to make a difference on the direction we want the county to go. The other thing that we have in the May primary is all 11 Republican precinct chairs are up for election. And I tell you, when you look at the votes, they don't get a whole lot of votes at the precinct level, maybe a couple hundred to win a precinct chair. versus, maybe a couple thousand for the primaries. But all 11 precincts are up for election. Importance there is those precincts can they vote for the county chair, GOP chair, in March following the November election. And so if you look at it, it's almost like a shadow government. That core team they determine what the influence and the direction of the county is going to be. And so it's been, our choice is really between development, which is being pushed by several groups within the county, or quality of life, so there's that balance. So you just have just a few people determine the direction of the county. They influence who runs for elections. They influence who's appointed to boards and commissions. So it's that closed loop system. It's that status quo. And we don't get the best results out of any kind of system like that, because you just involving a few people, not a lot. Let me summarize some things. On the design of our system, what gives us a unique advantage is our system of government was designed for we the people. We're top management, okay? We're top management. We the people to work together towards a more perfect union. And when you look at perfect, the perfect is really the difference between what the ideal should be and what the reality is. So more perfect is you're always striving for continuous improvement, because you're never going to achieve that. And what's funny is God designed variation as part of the, as part of the design of nature and humans. And when you looked at that variation, again, it gets back to that gap between what's perfect and imperfect. And so, yeah. So it's funny on the science side, when they looked at that whole concept of that variability, scientists took that and they described that variation as saying, okay, that it means that everybody is unique. Everything's one of a kind. No two people or things are exactly alike. And so that's the science community, and it kind of validated God's design, if you think. Now, in the quality profession, what these guys did is they, and I won't explain all the statistical techniques, but the quality profession includes scientists, engineers, and statisticians. And what they said is, any product or service, the closer you get to that target, the ideal, the higher the quality, the lower the cost to the individual and society. So in other words, they said, gee whiz, happier customers, make us more money and more successful than unhappy customers. And so when you look at that continuous improvement, it's all about reducing that gap between better and what you're currently doing. And so, yeah. So in addition, so that becomes pretty important. So when you look at that variation, in the Bible, God describes it as all needs are being met. All needs are being met. So think about it. Perfection is all needs are being met. So when you look at continuous improvement and quality and products and services, when you improve, more people are having more needs being met. And if you don't improve, that means people are being harmed because their needs aren't being met. So you're either getting better or worse. Are we increasing the number of people, increasing the quality of the needs that they're receiving, or we are just sticking with the status quo, which means people are continually harmed because their needs aren't met? So that's where that continuous improvement thing kind of plays into things. And so let me summarize. And not only do we need the political leadership, but we also need that spiritual leadership. And what's kind of interesting on that one is when you look at, let me get my notes here. Yeah. Spiritual leadership, and you look at local levels. We have around 40 churches here in the county. And 40 churches. And so, yeah. So, and it's funny too. And then when you look at the Christians, there are a lot of denominations, and there's a lot of gaps between denominations. A lot of people, when you look at the Bible and you look at the Constitution, you think it can be interpreted to fit with the times, and that's not exactly. That just creates a lot of polarity in these different issues. And so, so I would say I've summarized on the spiritual aspect is there's two aspects. Belief, a sincere belief in Jesus Christ leads to salvation, eternal life, and that's your ticket into heaven. And really the second part of that, and that's kind of maybe unknown, the second part of that is that sincere belief includes an acceptance and a knowledge that God has given us a purpose, a plan, talents, capabilities, challenges, opportunities, trials, and tribulations that we're supposed to leverage in support of God's plan. And oh, by the way, upon our death, we're judged by how well we applied those God-given talents that we were given. So in essence, on the Christian community, it's all about reducing that variation, right? Matthew 5:48, be perfect as my heavenly Father is perfect. And so in the Christian community, we're looking at reducing that gap, making things more perfect. As citizens, we the people are enabled to work together towards a more perfect union. And then in the business, if you work for a business or even an employee, the whole thing is how do you improve the service to the customers? So that's an advantage we could have by just having a common language for how do we improve things within the county. So to wrap it up, 3 things. Better results require better methods, and that's that commitment to continuous improvement, working towards that more perfect county, that more perfect community, and it's going to take us all to do that. We the people, we're top management. I can't imagine you go to these meetings and you've got employees making multi-million-dollar decisions and they don't involve top management, right? And that kind of incredible. And then in the Christian community, you have a responsibility to share the good news, and that's in support of the Great Commission. So it's everybody working together to make things more perfect, more resilient, make us stronger as a community. So that's our challenge. And so I appreciate you being here, and thanks for listening.
How many of you got a Constitution that was just handed out by the wonderful people over at 1776 a group over there? I would highly recommend. How many of you have ever read your U.S. Constitution? How many of you have ever read your state Constitution? That is a beautiful document right there. I will refer you to that. But a couple of things I wanted to talk about. It's just things that make me go, if you will. Is kind of the title of my talk today. Number one, if we can't assign gender because of your genitals, then I want you to ask yourself this question. Then why is if we remove your genitals, we can then affirm you of your gender type? You know what I'm saying there? So what we have going on is actually an evil conspiracy, and when we say an evil conspiracy, it would actually be of an evil cabal. I just love that word that we were just talking about right before I came up here to speak. We have a cabal. It's a group of people that are working against the things of God. Ephesians chapter 6 talks about that we're wrestling not against flesh and blood, but against powers of spiritual wickedness in high places. This is a good versus evil, a God versus Satan type of situation that we are fighting. I could bore you with hours of illustration. I could take you down to the Commonwealth of Kentucky, where the the Speaker of the House of the State House of Representatives was convicted in 2018 for running a prostitution ring out of the state house. You go, that makes me go, I wonder what's happening. I could take you here in the state of Indiana. You might think of Brian Bosma when he slept with several of his secretaries and his interns there on state property. Things that would make you go, I wonder what's happening. But then I want you to take you down the path of a lot of people are talking about the video that's out there about sex trafficking. The name slipping out of my mind. Jim Caviezel made the movie, and it talks about international sex trafficking. I mean, many times we think about all of these things happen over there. I live on the west central side of the state, right there near Covington, Indiana, just west of, about an hour west of Indianapolis, an hour north of Terre Haute. And we always blame over there, which is Illinois, we blame Governor Pritzker for what's going on. Oh, he's a communist. Oh, he's a Democrat. Oh, he's a Democrat, or whatever we call him. Him and his brother went, and what they did is they went and invested over $3 billion in order to make a prosthetic uterus. My daughter goes, well, but Dad, what's that for? And I said, well, what they stated was it was so that men can bear children. And my 15-year-old daughter figured it out. She goes, but Dad, where's the baby going to come out of the guy? And I said, now that will make you go, But I want to bring you back to Indiana. We always think that it happens over there, or maybe we should go to San Francisco, the land of the fruits and the flakes. You know, we think about, oh, it's going to happen over there, but come to here to Indiana, and I ask you this question. If we're constantly giving children pornography, it's readily available inside of the schools, it's readily available inside of movies, it's readily available inside your public libraries. We are grooming children for sex trafficking. What we have going on in Evansville, Indiana is sex trafficking. That is one of the number one cities of sex trafficking. But then I ask you this question. Did you know that just over the Ohio River inside of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, just across from Evansville, is a satanic organization? Might make you want to go, In Fountain, Warren, and Vigo, and Vermilion, and Park, and Montgomery counties, we have a problem going on in that area of child sex trafficking. It might not surprise you if you start connecting the dots that in Alvin, Illinois, during the Halloween season, when they go and celebrate the devil's holiday there, what they have sacrifices of animals at the Alvin Satanic Organization. Things that may make you stop and go, What I'm telling you is to conflate the two is because what happens inside child sex trafficking is absolutely despicable. It is demonic. I bring you back to Indiana again. How many of you have heard about the LEAP project, LEAP, up in Boone County, Indiana, Lebanon, Indiana? Have you heard about that? Oh, that's a 15-minute city, the LEAP project, LEAP. It's in Boone County. It's a 15-minute city. It's being funded by none other than, wait for it, Eli Lilly. Alas, they are wanting to make a 15-minute city, which will be a sustainable, UN sustainable city that will be available to you, that you don't have to go outside the city. They will encourage you not to drive. They will encourage you to restrict your movements. Now, that's not freedom. They are then wanting to pump 100 million gallons of water a day down from Tippecanoe County, 53 miles down from Tippecanoe County to Boone County, in order to give that project enough water. I ask you this question: why would we want to have anything to do with the cabal of the UN? Get us out of the UN, then the UN out of the US might be a good moniker that we might want to begin stating on that. But it's interesting as well as, do you know about currently how the British are coming inside of Indiana, with British Petroleum coming into Jasper County, White County, Newton County, Benton County, Lake County, Porter County, of British Petroleum coming in to do carbon sequestration? How many of you have heard about that project? Alas, you need to know about that project, because it's not just those counties, because Tenaska is trying to get into Warren County, and we already have the maps. You want to see me afterwards? I can show you the maps. By 2050. They will be crisscrossing the state, and they will be taking carbon dioxide from out of the air and putting it into the ground. You say, that sounds insane. How many of you have ever watched the movie Idiocracy? If you've never seen the movie Idiocracy, you need to go on YouTube and punch in Idiocracy boardroom and watch that about 3 to 4 minute clip where they're talking about whether or not they should put a sports drink onto the crops. And he's trying to explain to them, no, you need to put water on the crops. That's what makes crops grow. What they're trying to sell to us is that they're going to stop the dirty companies from belching out carbon dioxide from out of the end of the industrial process, and then they're going to pressurize it at 2,100 pounds per square inch, and they're going to then put it into a pipeline to ship it down to White County to put it into 9 different CO2 wells in White County. That's just White County. They're looking at doing 9 wells inside of Warren County. They're looking at about 12 wells, we were told, in Benton County, in order to be able to pump into the ground CO2. But I remember I was home educated, so if you think that, I have a halted speech, and because I'm so nervous being up here, it really hindered me in my speaking abilities to be home educated. That's where the twitch comes from. But I learned was about photosynthesis. How many of you know it's one of those Scrabble words that you were able to win a lot of points with is photosynthesis. The other one is sequestration. You can finally use the Q inside of Scrabble. So with photosynthesis, how God created it, there in Genesis chapter 1, he spoke words, and he said, let there be light. That's the light that's needed for photosynthesis, because the trees that we are looking at here, they go and take 6 parts of CO2 and 6 parts water. They then go and have the light that was created by God, and the carbon dioxide that was created by God, and the water that was created by God. And they go and do a chemical process called photosynthesis, and then it creates 1 molecule of glucose. From that 1 molecule of glucose, it also releases 6 molecules of oxygen. That's what you and I use to breathe. So it's as if, and I say this with a high level of sarcasm, if you will, it's as if there was a creator that knew what he was doing. That he created the trees and the plant life in order so that we might breathe out carbon dioxide, so they might eat that carbon dioxide and then breathe out oxygen in order for us to breathe, in order to keep us alive, so that we might keep them alive, that they might keep us alive. And it's a wonderful circle of life. But alas, these global elites, and don't be fooled, they're global elites that have one goal, and it's not the goal of God. It's these people we often hear about. We again go over there. We say, oh, it's happening over there. How many of you know that your Republican governor, Eric Holcomb of the Holcomb-Crouch administration, 5 times Eric was a keynote speaker at the World Economic Forum? 5 times. The WEF, the World Economic Forum, who Larry the Snake Fink is a board member of, and Larry, good old Larry, is the director, the chairman of BlackRock. Alas, of BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, known globalists. That's right, they own a controlling interest of BP, which is trying to do this carbon sequestration here in the state of Indiana. Oh, as John was talking about, how they tried to say, and their marketing is one thing. Oh, we are stopping abortion here in the state of Indiana. I remember sitting there on the 3rd floor as we are reading through Senate Bill 1, and we look at page number 41, and it says, if the mother requests the abortion, nobody can be charged for the abortion. Page number 41. Page number 15, 16, or 17, I can't remember which one it was. One of page number 15, I believe, was where they took away fetal pain so that they can harvest the organs of the child in order to have a better specimen. They took away fetal pain. They go there on page number 17, I believe it was where they went in on that bill, and they said that it's completely up to the doctor, in only the doctor's viewpoint, if that murder was medically necessary. It's up to the doctor. And that bill was touted by the Indiana Right to Life as the champion bill. Again, the logic doesn't work when you actually read the facts. We have to, as people, quit falling for the marketing of globalist elitists. I take you back to the Constitution. If we all read it, I hope you get yours out here, and I will read to you. How many of you know the 5 things that are enumerated in the First Amendment? What are the 5 things that the First Amendment tells the government they can't do? Number 1, do you know what number 1 is? The First Amendment. What does it tell the government they can't do? He gives us freedom of speech, right? Freedom of religion, freedom of press, right to redress grievances, and we can peaceably assemble. There's 5 things that the First Amendment tells the government, enumerates to the government. And by the way, we don't even need the First Amendment in order to have those, because those come from God. Those don't come from the government. Because if it comes from the government, it's a mere vote away from it no longer being. However, our rights come from God, not from the government. Second Amendment, what does that give us? What does it enumerate to us? That we have the right to bear arms. The Fourth Amendment, and I'm going somewhere with this, the Fourth Amendment says that we have the right to be secure in our persons, our houses, our papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. You have to have a warrant in order to go and search and seize. The Fifth Amendment. How many of you know what your Fifth Amendment is? What would you say your Fifth Amendment is? You don't have to answer questions, but there's also a key word in there. It says you have to have due process in order for your rights to be infringed. And I would submit to you that eminent domain is not due process. Eminent domain is an overreach of the government. And in this carbon sequestration project, we already have eminent domain, already the law of the land, because we were sold out by our Republican supermajority in 2022. They can now come in and take your land in the state of Indiana for this carbon sequestration project. But then I go to the 10th Amendment, a widely not known amendment, or the 9th and 10th Amendment. We'll read the 9th Amendment. The enumeration in the Constitution, the writing down in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. And the 10th Amendment says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Let me break it down for you, West Central Indiana style. If it ain't written in the Constitution, those rights go back to the people and it goes back to the states. I went on Google. I asked Google. I said, Google, search the Constitution for carbon sequestration. The little thing still spinning. It can't find it. I asked Siri. I said, hey Siri, can you find carbon sequestration inside of the Constitution? And it can't find it. So what does that tell me? It comes back to us and to the people and the states. That's who it comes back to. But alas, we have Republican senators, Republican House of Representatives that are giving away our land under eminent domain to take carbon dioxide out of the air so photosynthesis can't occur, to take carbon dioxide, to put it in the ground. But have you ever noticed that there's good things that if you put them in the wrong spot, it becomes bad? You know what I'm talking about? Like water. When you drink water, it goes in the right spot. It's a very good thing. You're supposed to have water. If you don't have water for 3 days, then what happens? You die. But if you get water in your lungs, it's called aspiration. Water in the wrong spot is a bad thing. Carbon dioxide is as well a bad thing in the wrong spot. In the air, it's a very good thing because it causes photosynthesis, but if you take and put carbon dioxide in the ground, it hits water, it becomes carbonic acid. The number one thing that they're trying to put this carbon sequestration is in the Mount Simon geologic structure, Mount Simon sandstone geologic structure. Let me get that right. And the number one way to dissolve sandstone is with the use of acid. Folks, but these are the people okay with taking children and getting them so hyped up that then their adrenaline then hits their bloodstream, and then you can siphon off the blood and you can drink the blood with adrenochrome in it, and then they get a high out of it. They're perfectly okay with killing people, don't forget. These are the people that it's perfectly okay in the state, I believe it's in Delaware or Maryland, where they are perfectly okay with even up to 28 days after birth. The child has passed through the birth canal, fully born, breathing off of the air that is in the United States of America, fully born, and they can still go and kill the child even after birth. These people are those people that are okay with these things. So it is of little import to them if they were to go and to poison the ground. So if it's not at 2100 psi, remember at 2100 psi, all of a sudden carbon dioxide becomes a gas instead of a liquid again. So my question is, do they remain at 2100 psi in the ground, or how do we keep it as a liquid, or does it turn back into a gas? Well, if it turns into a gas, there's all sort of transmissive faults and fissures throughout the capstone and throughout all of the area here. That's why we have highs and lows and the topography in the area. And now all of a sudden it's a gas and it's seeping back through. According to the EPA, and trust me, I'm no banner waver of the EPA. I put it this way, even a broken clock can be right twice a day. But the EPA says that it is of danger when it turns back to a gas that it could inhabit inside of buildings, low-lying areas. And it's just like the carbon dioxide fire extinguishers that we use, where carbon dioxide is in high concentration, there is no oxygen. It pushes the oxygen out. That's why we have fire extinguishers with carbon dioxide. The firefighters get it. They understand. They use it often. That you can blow that onto the fire in order to keep the oxygen away. So you put it into the ground. That's taxpayer funded, because they have to have taxpayer funds, because this isn't really a business. Because a business could stand on its own, but the subsidies have to fund this business. They have to take the property by and large by eminent domain, because it's a national emergency, as put out by Sleepy Joe. He called it a national emergency for this global war on carbon and carbon dioxide. It's a national emergency thing. But I say, Joe, what about the children from Maui that they're just gone? 2,000 children disappeared. What about the 80 children? They did a huge PR campaign in Erie, Pennsylvania, for 80 unaccompanied minors from the border. They had the playhouses, they had the food trucks, they had all the powers that be. They had the media out there. They had the photo ops of the 80 children of, how they're doing a wonderful job with these unaccompanied minors that came over our porous border. That's another issue, by the way. But that's not a matter of national security of our porous border. But what about those 80 children, and then now all of a sudden they've vanished? No one knows where they're at. There's not a receipt, if you will. They didn't check them out of the homes. They don't know where they're at. They have medical records that show that they had dental work done and they got this ailment fixed at this primary care physician, and this urgent care cared for them here, but we don't know where those children are. But these are the same people that would care little about poisoning your water. It will kill all aquatic life. What if there were, they don't have earthquakes here in Indiana now, do they? We've never felt an earthquake here in Brown County. There'd be no possibility that if it was contained there, that we might not have a seismic activity, that the capstone may break and may release the sequestered carbon dioxide, which would then, no, there's nothing to see here, moving on. We can't ask those questions because we must do it for Mother Earth. Isn't that another idol that we have before our Almighty God? I'm not asking for you to go and pour bleach on the and poison the waterways and kill all the aquatic life. That would be crazy. But that which they are doing will do all of that. But it's in the name of green energy. So what do we do? How do we become people that follow the 10th Amendment and say, no, that is the rights of the states and of the people? Well, I take you to a person, and I will quote to you from a speech, and you will by the end most likely know it. It goes like this: no man thinks more highly than I do of patriotism as well as abilities of the very worthy gentlemen who have just addressed the House. But different men often see the same subject in different lights, and therefore I hope it will not be thought disrespectful to those gentlemen if, entertaining as I do opinions of a character very opposite to theirs, I shall speak forth my sentiments freely and without reserve. There's no time for ceremony. The question before the House is one of awful moment to this country. For my own part, I consider it as nothing less than a question of freedom or a question of slavery. And in proportion to the magnitude of that subject ought to be the freedom of the debate. It is only in this way that we can hope to arrive at truth and fulfill the great responsibility which we hold to God and our country. Should I keep back my opinions at such a time through fear of giving offense? I should consider myself as guilty of treason towards my country and of an act of disloyalty toward the majesty of heaven, which I revere above all earthly kings. He continued, it is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. The matter before the state of Indiana, the Hoosier heartland now, is a question of freedom or the question of slavery. If you wish to be bought and paid for by the global elites, then let's continue on as we are right now. If you care little to be owned by the global elites, we must not continue doing that which we have done. We must change course now. It is high time for us to understand that the Indiana Republican Party does not have our best interest at heart. You say, oh, John, then who are you going to vote for? You've got to play nice because they are in power. I say there's no time for ceremony because of the magnitude of the subject. The magnitude of the subject matter is too high for us to be so petty that we care about ceremony. People's lives are in danger, and you say, oh, that is such an overreach. You are being a conspiracy theorist. I say no, because we have the very documents, the primary source documentation. Out of their own mouths, we have what they believe to be truth that condemns them. So what must we do? As has been mentioned, the precinct committee officer, we must take back over that. As has been mentioned, we must be down at the county commission meetings. We must be down at the county council meetings. In Fountain County, Indiana, the county in which I reside, they passed an $18 million budget last year with exactly 0 people being at the county council meeting in order to say one word about the budget. But alas, just a few short months later, many were risen up saying that that was a debacle and they shouldn't have spent so much money. I say, then why weren't we there at the beginning? Oh, it is fun casting stones at politicians. Oh, it's so easy. They live in ivory in glass. They live in glass houses. They live raised up, and we can cast the stones at them and we can call them out. But I stand before you today calling us as citizens of Indiana out, saying it is high time that we accept the responsibility that has been given to us. We should not be looking towards Indianapolis and saying shame on them. We should be looking inside of our counties, inside of our precincts, inside of our churches, inside of our houses, asking who's to blame. And I would tell you, that person that you look at in the mirror is a great person to begin with to change the tide inside of the state of Indiana. We, as a united voice, can stand up and raise up and make a difference inside of our government. But we must have that resolve. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions? How do we get the fire back in everybody else? Well, I believe that it's groups like this, thanks to Mike and others that have put this on. It is a way to do this. There are other groups. We also have to get off of the news media that keeps separating us, including your Fox Newses that don't talk about the information, that we have groups like this, that we have groups like Southern Indiana Patriots, that we have groups in Bedford, Indiana. We have groups that are meeting on a consistent basis. They will never talk about these things. We have to get off of controlled media, because then all it is a discouragement, that we are able to get bills, that we are able to get roll call votes in 2022 in order to expose how the legislators really think on it. Those are all victories. According to the Sun Tzu Art of War, I ascribe to it somewhat, maybe not all of it, but the Sun Tzu Art of War says success begets success, and we can continuously show success. How many of you know that we successfully passed a resolution inside of Fountain County, Indiana, Elkhart, Indiana, Jennings County, Indiana, and there was another one, I believe, saying that pornography is wrong? How many of you knew that we passed that? That's how we have one, maybe two other people that may know that. We have been having successes. How do we get that? We have to continually get onto groups that are being able to spread what is actually happening. We conquered them, stopped them for carbon sequestration in Iowa and in South Dakota. Now they're trying to come back a different way. We can show that we have success. Those are ways that we can start getting fire behind people, is if they see that there is hope, light at the end of the tunnel, and we have that light. Does that answer your question? So I'd highly recommend to you, if you're not getting the New American, I've got my card. You can get the New American, which is our periodical from the John Birch Society. You mentioned the COVID issue is in May of 2020. We came out with the coming vaccine mandates and digital IDs. It was before anybody was talking about it. Held it up at an event in Spokane, Washington. Said, hey, this is going to be coming. It was a Republican event. They said that was conspiratorial. The next guy held it up and said it, called it conspiratorial, threw it on the ground and stomped on it. And it's like, I guess we knew what was coming. You need that kind of information. You start showing people that kind of provable information on that, you can also build an army that way as well. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and it looks like you're nice and warm and toasty. I just want to make a few comments up here, and it's always great to see a group of patriots. My name is Curtis Hill, and I'm running for governor because I am convinced that Hoosiers in this state are hungry for proven conservative leadership that knows how to get the job done. And folks, we are definitely at a crossroads in this country. Our government has failed us. The people that we send to Washington, D.C. fail us. And it's time to choose bold, courageous leaders here in Indiana that know how to fight and know how to win. We have lost faith in our institutions. Objective truth is under attack constantly. We're experiencing the manipulation of justice, the weaponization of race, and the sexualization of children, which is destroying our American way of life. And it's time for us to rise up and fight back. I'm here like you're here because we believe in America. We believe in freedom. I believe in a culture of life. That's why when 2,411 aborted Indiana babies were discovered in the state of Illinois in 2019, as the Attorney General for this state, I went to Illinois and brought them back and buried them here in the state of Indiana to establish their humanity in death that they were denied in life. That's a culture of life that we support. I believe in liberty. And that's why, as your Attorney General, when the Holcomb-Crouch administration put a driver's license, a third gender on your driver's license, remember that? It was the X to compete with male and female. We put a stop to it as Attorney General. Why? Because the truth is there are only two genders, male and female, and that's worth fighting for. And ladies and gentlemen, during the pandemic, the governor of this state determined that he was going to mandate the wearing of masks. And as your Attorney General, I put a stop to it, determining that it was unconstitutional to force masks on a free people and to hold them accountable criminally for that. We did that defending your freedom. So when we're running for governor, it's imperative that we come out and talk to people about what it is we'll do. You're going to hear that from other folks. I'm convinced that people like you are sick and tired of people who come in and tell you one thing and do another. How many of you seen that when you sent someone to Washington or you sent someone to Indianapolis and they completely turncoat on you? You can predict that based on what they do. If you have people who have run for office before or who've been elected to serve, check out their record. When someone says that they believe in liberty, ask them, what have you done to fight for our freedom? What have you done to demonstrate your ability to fight and win? That's imperative, ladies and gentlemen. And that's what I've done as the Attorney General for this state. I'm a former prosecutor. It means I believe in accountability. I believe in freedom. Folks, look for people who are going to work hard to support your freedom. That's what I'll do as your governor. Thank you so much. I'll be happy to chat with any of you individually. And let me say this. Support candidates that believe in freedom and can demonstrate their freedom. You can find us at curtishill.com. We have literature here for you to take a look at. Some of you are from out of state. That's okay, because here's the deal. You need leadership from the states, from different states, to coalesce and fight your federal government when the government gets crazy. So support Indiana candidates, support candidates from out of state that support your freedom. Thank you very much. God bless you. No. You say, did prosecutors stop your freedom? You're talking about those new wave of George Soros prosecutors. That's not what that's not what we're talking about. That's a social justice prosecutor. They don't count. There's a wave going on in this country right now with social justice prosecutors that's turning the justice system upside down. You heard what I said. The weaponization of justice. Part of that is this new breed of big city prosecutors. That's not what I was. I was a constitutional prosecutor. We are the genuine public defenders. We are the ones who fight to support your freedom, to support the freedom of those who are good people. So there's a big, big difference, and that's a part of what's going on in this country right now, why we have to return to freedom. Well, that's the problem with we need to have people who understand what their rights are and the people return to the power. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in the justice system, and I've seen the justice system be bastardized to where it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And that's a part of why we need to understand what our freedoms are, what the Constitution is all about, and our place in we the people. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. Those are real words, and many people don't understand that. So it's imperative that we have an education system that puts the art of civics back into our classroom so young kids understand what it means to be an American citizen, what their rights are, but more importantly, what their responsibilities are as well. I like to think. Working is all good and fine, and we love to work, but one of the problems that we have in this country is people don't think. People don't use their brains. People don't engage their intelligence. If you stop and think about most things that are going on, we can think our way through it. I believe in a limited government, and the only way that a limited government is successful is if we have well-thinking people behind that government that are making sure that the Constitution is protected and adhered to. So thinking is very important for what we need to do forward. We need thinking Americans, and we don't have a lot of that right now. Well, I think if you rely on the education system to teach your children, you're making a big mistake right there. I mean, the first thing that teaches children are parents, and then we teach children through church and faith, and then from there we want children to engage in self-discovery. I'm a firm believer in critical thinking. If you teach a child how to think critically, there's no amount of garbage that you can put before that kid that will turn him left or right. Thinking critically, understanding what your choices are, what your options are, and what your stand as a responsibility are first and foremost. But thank you very much, and I'll come around and chat with you as many as you'd like. Thank you very much.
So anyway, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, and God put a couple things on my heart, and it might sound kind of weird, but I want to talk about ants and water. And this might sound crazy, but you guys ever seen an anthill? You know, and you sit and watch these ants, and they're just kind of going around, just doing their business. Some are going in and out, bringing food, doing whatever, just doing their job. And that's what these American people are doing out here. They're just out there just going around, doing their job, just whatever, watching their football games, going to work, coming home, trying to feed their family. And have you ever went up and just kind of kicked an anthill and watched those ants just go crazy? And that's what we need in this country right now. And I think God is shaking this country up. And until that anthill that they're in gets kicked and destroyed, they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. They're not going to stand up. And that's what we need. We need to start kicking some more anthills and getting these ants fired up, getting these people fired up. Because they may not see what's going on right now. They may not be awake to what's going on right now. But there's going to come a time when they're not going to be able to avoid it. When it really starts getting in their pocketbook, or it really starts affecting their children that these people out here destroying. They're coming for our children, and when they come for their children, maybe they'll wake up then, and maybe they'll show up. But then it could be too late. So all these people are saying, oh, I'll stand up when it's time. Well, it's time. It's past time. We got to get these people awake. You know, and there's many of us that's been out here for years in D.C. and all over this country just trying to wake people up to the truth. And that's all. We just got to get the truth out there. People look at you like you're crazy or some conspiracy theorist, but eventually they see it and they realize that we're telling the truth. And that's when we're going to be needed to help these people that are so confused and they don't have a clue what's going on. And then the other thing I was going to talk about, okay, I said water. You think about water is really good, but water can be really bad. You know, we need water. We need water. The trees need water. Plants need water. Good water. But if you have, you know, a leak in your roof or a leak in your camper or something like that, and you got water leaking in, that's bad. Or you got water that they're polluting, that's bad water, you know. And we've got, just like Satan, if you leave a little crack, he's going to seep in and he's going to destroy. And that's what's happening right now. Satan is seeping into these people's lives, and he's destroying. And we've got to fight against Satan. We've got to get on God's side. We've got to put God first in everything we do. Everything. And until America turns to God and puts him first, then things are not going to change. And I know you've all heard this, 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven, forgive their sins, and heal their land. And until people turn from celebrating Halloween and the devil's holiday, and they wake up and they seek God first in their life, that's what it's going to take to change this country, to change this world. And God is shaking this world up right now. We know that evil's being eradicated across this world as we speak. Some people see it, some people don't. Some people don't believe it. But we know it's happening. Is it happening fast enough? I don't know, but that's in God. It's all in God's timing. So I just had a few things there. Like I said, I wasn't going to speak today or nothing like that, but I'm sitting here and I'm just praying and I'm thinking, and God put those two things on my heart about the ants and water, and hopefully that made a little sense. But I appreciate those of you that did show up here. I know thousands will probably see this, the speeches that we had here today, online later, which that's cool. But anyway, appreciate y'all for showing up, and that's all I had to say.